All
Hey,
right. So
Chris.
I'm
Welcome,
I'm
Chris.
Dawn Ellison, and I'm in the core group of Healthcare Reinvention Collaborative. And as many of you know, our other core members on the call today are Denise Wiseman and Paul Burens. Jennifer and Wael are elsewhere today.
Jennifer is
So we're
joining
for
right now.
Oh, is she great? There she is. All right. There's Jennifer Beach showing up. Awesome. So today we are fortunate to be shining a light on the work of a couple of our network members, and I'm going to introduce them here in a moment. You will recall that our mission is to identify, connect, support, and illuminate every healthcare change maker. So we're really excited to be shining a light on our guests during this September Shine a Light event. We have, as I said, two guests today. They will be given approximately 7 to 10 minutes to describe their work, and then they will ask for what they need from the community and offer what they can to the community. While they are informing us about their work, please feel free to let them know what you can offer them, as well as what they might offer you in the chat. I want to be sure we have time to get both of our guests and then have a rich conversation. So when they are finished speaking, I'll introduce the next guest, and we will continue until both have had a chance to describe their work, ask for what they need, and offer what they can. When they're finished, I will open things up for a conversation, at which time you can ask more about their work, discuss possible collaborations, or just express appreciation for what they're doing. I would like to introduce our first guest, Vicki Landers. And it looks like she's in the spotlight, so I'll go ahead. Vicki is a physical therapist turned speaker and coach who specializes in helping healthcare professionals recognize their agency amid industry challenges. After transitioning from clinical care to leadership roles in IT and home health, she discovered her passion for teaching people to shift their perspective through different lenses to find what's within their control. She now focuses on speaking to healthcare organizations and coaching individuals to help them realize they have more power to create positive change than they believe. Please tell us about your work and then ask for what you need and offer what you can.
Thank you so much for that lovely introduction. I honestly appreciate the opportunity to be here. This is a great organization, and I think there's so much potential for us to do something bigger and different within healthcare in the US. So I appreciate all of you so much. So, like she said, I'm a physical therapist. I grew up and went to college at the University of Missouri, and then moved to Colorado and California, and then back here to Kansas City. And I practiced clinically for 11 or 12 years, and then I shifted into management and leadership positions, as well as IT analyst and strategy. And somewhere along that time, I started to kind of notice things about people. Whenever you're in a leadership position, you have the opportunity to give people news that is change. And one of the things that I started to notice is that you could give one message to a group of people. And on one extreme, you could get somebody who's so angry and so upset and coming at you and blaming you for everything that's wrong in their lives. And you have the other person who's like, oh, okay, I got this, let's go. And I just thought it was so interesting to see the complete different reactions that people have to literally the same set of events. So I noticed that. And then the other thing is that I was trying to figure out, I moved from a formal leadership position to more of an influencer within my department. And I recognized kind of what was happening within the world of IT and how I was supporting people, and that my role was about to change dramatically from the teaching that I was doing and the strategy that I was creating to somebody who was just not going to get to interact with people anymore. I was just going to be doing analyst work. And I had become a coach because of my interest in humans. And so I left that job, and I left actually working for a hospital organization to really go focus on this idea of understanding how people see the world and understanding how I could help them see in a world that was less frustrating to them. Because the person who was so angry, they were frustrated, and I wanted to help them not be so frustrated. So that's sort of where I've targeted my coaching. But I also discovered in this process that teaching and being in front of people and helping them see light bulbs is the thing that makes me the happiest. It's the thing that like brightens my day and lights me up when I can help people see things differently. So the framework that I have is this idea of a lens that, we all have lenses that we wear. And, when we're thinking about glasses, we wear a lens for reading. We wear a lens for, computers and distance and bird watching. Um, but we also have a lens that we wear when we're seeing situations and events. And the thing is, just like with glasses, we don't know what we're not seeing. until we change our lens. So I like to help people understand this idea about the lenses that they wear. And they may wear a lens that they're a victim, or maybe it's the lens of conflict where everything is either right or wrong, or maybe it's a lens of tolerance, okay, whatever, or compassion or curiosity. And what we find is that when people start to look at their world through a lens of curiosity, it reduces the friction and it reduces the frustration and it removes judgment. And this is what's so important for people in healthcare because every single day we are dealing with new regulations, productivity standard changes, insurance companies, denying services and effectively practicing medicine. And if we can start to separate ourselves and just be curious, that's when we can actually take back our agency and start to have a bigger effect because we're not dealing with the swirl and the things that are going on inside of us. So I help people do that in two ways. I am an individual coach and I work with people one-on-one. People I really love to work with are like new supervisors and new managers. The people who they were a great clinician and they got promoted and then don't really have the training or the skills yet to lead and to influence in a positive way. They're just kind of floundering. I really love working with those kinds of people. And then I really love to speak with organizations, and I have my primary speech really is all about the lens that people wear and understanding that you wear a lens, everybody else wears a lens, and that the lens that you wear influences everybody around you. So you can start to change your culture just by changing the lens that you wear because it changes your behaviors. And when you change your behaviors, you influence people in a different way. So that's really what I do and what I love to do, and the thing that is the most fun because I really love to change. When I was teaching continuing ed, what I always said at the beginning of my sessions was the purpose of today is not for you to get continuing ed. The purpose of today is for you to learn something so that you can leave the room, go do or be something different that makes a different impact on the people around you. And I believe that every time I'm on stage, every time that I work with somebody, that's my purpose is to help people do and be better. So that is my scoop. My ask is that I really want to connect with anybody who has relationships with healthcare organizations that invite speakers, whether it's hospitals, honestly, medical association, nursing organizations, home care associations, leading age organizations, senior services organizations, or senior community, what are they, CCRCs. Connections to anybody who happens to book speakers or who knows people who put on events that are designed for healthcare professionals so that people can, again, wear a different lens so they can influence their world and maybe have a bigger impact on the way that healthcare is changing within the US. What I'd like to offer is that and I think this will be in the link, Denise, I'm not 100% certain, but I offer 3 free 30-minute coaching conversations that are really focused on helping the HRC members understand the lens through which they're approaching their work. If they're an entrepreneur, what's the lens that they're using, and maybe talk through some different ways that they might address the challenges that they have, just a different lens that they might use. And so that would be a lot of fun for me to be able to give that 30-minute opportunity for people to be able to identify their lens and figure out maybe a new lens that would serve them better so that they're a lot less frustrated, feel a lot less like a victim, and can instead look at an event with curiosity.
Great. Thank you, Vicki.
And I want to respond to Paul. The need for coaching for newly elevated leaders is grossly underrecognized. 100%. I am so on top of that. And organizations don't necessarily value funding that. We want to fund the CEO and the executive team, which is extraordinarily important. And the young up and coming people have a greater influence on the frontline staff, which is your patient experience. And it's the actual clinical outcomes. And so those are the people that I see that gap. And I would so love to fill that gap.
Thank you. And I'm going to go right next to Drew. And I'll wait till he gets spotlight lit here.
Just one moment, please.
All righty. I'll give her a little extra time today. There he is.
But only today, right?
That's right. All right. Dr. Drew Remignanti is a retired emergency physician with 40 years of experience who practiced through the foundational years of emergency medicine as a specialty. Having experienced healthcare from both sides as a physician and as a chronic autoimmune disease patient for over 50 years, he brings a unique dual perspective to understanding what's broken in our healthcare system. He holds an MPH in public health and has completed international public health projects in Pakistan and Ghana. He's the author of The Healing Connection, a partnership for your health, which represents his legacy work advocating for relationship-centered healthcare reform. Please share your work with us, Drew.
Okay, thank you, Dawn, for inviting me on and for that introduction. I wanted to highlight the fact that I come at this issue. My book is based on an effort to try to preserve the patient-physician relationship, and I come at it from both angles of being a lengthy career physician and also a lengthy career patient. Just add the highlight of my career or low point of my patient career was when I had a stroke. I was actually at the very end of an emergency department shift in my own hospital and a single coverage. Unfortunately, it was emergency department was empty of patients when my staff said to me I needed to take off my white coat and get on a stretcher because I was looking wrong to them. When I basically they noticed I had a left-sided hemiparesis and I was being a little bumbling in my speech and talk and my walking. And they later told me they tried to make it up to chalk it up to the fact that maybe I had a Bell's palsy and was sleepwalking. And so they were kind of in denial that it could be anything else. It turned out to be that I had clotted off my right middle cerebral artery at its origin. Because a couple of details, the right middle cerebral artery was a good choice because it didn't involve my left hemisphere, so there was no speech involvement for me, and there was no didn't affect my dominant right side. Anyway, without those additional deficits, I was able to eventually rehabilitate back into emergency medicine by 1997. I had a 5-year enforced hiatus in my career. And when I came back into emergency medicine after that 5-year hiatus, medicine had changed in a number of interrelated ways that had not definitely been a change for the better. Emergency medicine had changed for the better. We had rapid sequence intubation meds now. We didn't have to brutally intubate patients without sedating or paralyzing them. So that was nice. But the kind of things that changed in the interim, one of the very first things I noticed when I came back to emergency medicine was up there on the vital signs across the top of the sheet, there was this new number from 0 to 10, which was the patient's pain scale. I thought, well, that's kind of odd because all the other vital signs are very objective measurements. And here you have this very subjective measurement giving pride of place at the top of the sheet along with the very objective vital signs. And so that was surprising enough. But then it was even more distressing to learn that now that was like the most important vital sign for the administrative people, which was getting rid of people's pain. And it was always important to us to control people's pain, but it was equally important to us to figure out why they were in pain, what the cause of it was, and what the best management of it should be. But from the administrator's point of view, they really just wanted a satisfied patient who might come back to the emergency department. So intense pressure was placed on us through things like patient satisfaction surveys, like the Press-Ganey score, trying to get the best Press-Ganey scores that the hospital could achieve through you. And I did have a nurse practitioner colleague tell me at one point it was implied to her that she should perhaps be more liberal with her use of narcotic pain medications with her patients so that she could improve her survey scores. And that was done in parallel with, at the very same time period, Purdue Pharma was promoting and marketing their OxyContin medicine as a narcotic pain medication that was very safe and not likely to lead to narcotic addiction. We all know how that ended up turning out. The thing that I found most appalling after returning to emergency medicine after 5 years was that the patient-physician relationship was being replaced by this consumer-provider model, which is what we're suffering under right now. Patient-physician relationship is rapidly being replaced by a consumer-provider model, which is both less effective and more expensive, I find. And that hallowed patient-physician relationship is well along the way of being completely replaced. So that's what motivated me to write my book, which is what I have to offer for what it's worth. The first phase of my chronic illness was ulcerative colitis, in which I had 15 hospitalizations and half a dozen, 7 different abdominal surgeries to deal with that. And the second stage was when I had this stroke, which was thought to be from the same exact autoimmune process. Now I'm in a third phase where it's the same autoimmune process is now attacking my liver. So I'm glad I got my book done before the liver disease has made me less alert than I normally am. At any rate, that's my ask, is for people to consider taking a look at it and giving my book a read. It's 300 pages with 280 references because I felt it was important to try to get patients and physicians on the same page. As there's no way we're going to preserve the patient-physician relationship unless all hands are on deck trying to do it, include all healthcare workers and patients themselves. I found that healthcare workers, you can only make so much noise before you're fired as too squeaky a wheel, which hospital administrators don't want to fire their patients, of course. So I think we need to enroll patients in this effort to try to improve the patient-physician relationship. Healthcare decision-making, of course, would be far easier if we were just simply mechanistic biomedical entities, but we're not. As George Engel explained in his biopsychosocial model, which came out as far back as 1977, we are a much more complex species than pure biomedical entities. And so the one thing that I did in my book, which I think readers can benefit from, is I have 280 plus references in my book, and I was able to find active links to 250 plus of those articles, so people can go to the original research that I found that supports the patient-physician relationship, not just as a nice sounding thing, but as a more functional thing, and can even actually cut our mortality rates in half if we pay attention to it. So it's not like it just benefits us as physicians, it benefits all of us as patients as well. I do want to just end on 3 good news highlights from the scientific studies that I did find. The first one was in the topic matter of adherence, which is a very low-tech, low-cost way to reduce our mortality rate risk by as much as 50%. You can cut your mortality rate in half by being a more adherent patient. And you become a more adherent patient by becoming more knowledgeable about and more engaged in the planning of how we're going to treat our healthcare. And when patients do that, they are subsequently more adherent with that plan. And here I'm going to, like I said, read some quotes from the studies that I came across that I found eye-opening and made it easy for me to proceed with the research for my book. Here's one. Poor adherers to treatment were 2.6 times more likely than good adherers to die within a year of follow-up. That's a conclusion of a classic gold standard randomized placebo-controlled double-blinded study with the use of beta blockers in the setting of the post-heart attack patient. So I came at the whole topic of writing my book with a skepticism, which we should all do when we read everything about anything regarding medicine. So I said, that just indicates that good treatment works, right? You take your beta blocker in a post-MI setting, you're going to do better than people who don't take it. However, this was the interesting thing. The same findings were present whether you were in the placebo category or the propranolol category. The study authors write, poor adherers to placebo were 2.5 times more likely than good adherers to die within a year of follow-up. So it didn't matter whether you're taking the placebo or the beta blocker in terms of the success you achieve. Simply adhering to a treatment plan reduces mortality. In the book, I go in a little more depth into things like healthy adherer effect and placebo effect, which may be contributing to that surprising finding. The second category of studies I came across were what I refer to as connectedness studies. And these are quotes from the conclusions of these studies. Individuals with adequate social relationships have a 50% greater likelihood of survival compared to those with poor or insufficient social relationships. In fact, the most isolated group of men had a mortality rate 2.3 times higher than men with the most social connections. While for women, it was even more impressive. The more isolated women had 2.8 times higher mortality rates than women with more social connections. And again, as a skeptical emergency doc, wasn't unusual for us in the ED to have a patient come in because someone went to check on them and found them at the bottom of a set of steps where they had slipped during the night and fallen and either fractured their hip or somehow incapacitated themselves. And then they were lying on the floor in their home for sometimes hours on end, the poor souls. And then they developed rhabdomyolysis and kidney failure. So it made perfect sense to me that that's just friends checking in on you, isn't it? So if you have more friends, you have more friends likely to check in on you and find you. However, what the authors of these studies find when they look more carefully at all the data, there's essentially no difference between objective and subjective measures of social isolation when predicting mortality. In other words, simply feeling less lonely and feeling less isolated reduces our mortality, consistent with George Engel's biopsychosocial model of what we are as a species. And the final category is what are the volunteering studies in which people can show compassion for others. Again, I'm reading a conclusion from one of those studies. The 44% reduction in mortality associated with high volunteerism in this study was only slightly smaller than the 49% reduction associated with not smoking. Taken together, these findings strongly suggest that giving support rather than receiving support accounts for the benefits of social contact. And I said, well, I at first dismissed that whole category of studies because I wasn't even going to include them because, well, that's just easy because we were just self-selecting for people in good health because they're more likely to volunteer. Wouldn't that be so? However, again, when you look more carefully at the people in the studies, the health advantage of volunteering among those in worse health is twice as large as the health advantage among the healthiest Europeans, is the conclusion of one of these studies. And that was a massive study over 30 plus years involving nearly 300,000 participants with close to 1 million observations. So it really didn't matter if you were in good health or not. It seems that in one of life's perfect little ironies, there appears to be substantial evidence to suggest that health-wise, it is in our own self-interest to strive daily to be less self-interest, to be less self-interested, to be more connected, more compassionate with our fellow human beings. Now, these are observation studies. You would say, well, gee, they're not gold standard randomized controlled placebo studies, which of course you couldn't do. You couldn't force some people to volunteer and some people not volunteer. You couldn't force some people to have some friends and other people not to have any friends. So they have to be observational studies. And when people make that objection, I say to them, name for me the study that was the gold standard proving, first you ask yourself, do you believe that smoking is a risk factor for lung cancer? Nearly everybody says, yes, they do. So I would say, what's the name of the study and the authors of the randomized controlled, placebo-controlled, double-blinded study that proved that? And you just can't, nobody can name it because it doesn't exist. The study that proved that association, which was subsequently proved again and again by further studies, was a huge observational study called the British Doctors Study by Dolan Hill, published in 1950. Because again, you can't ethically randomize some people to smoke and some people not to smoke. So observational studies have their limitations. And the reason I put all these studies in, because when I found one that showed something surprising like the conclusions I'm mentioning, then I found a second and a third, and sometimes as much as 6 or 8 different studies. The ones with the placebo benefits, I found a good 10 or 12. I've had 5 or 6 mentioned in the book. The volunteering studies, again, another half a dozen or so. So anyway, I think what we need to do as a society is pay more attention to the fact that we are a biopsychosocial species. And not only is the conversion from a healthcare worker-patient relationship important because it feels good, it causes you to live longer, and there's evidence. I remain hopeful that the process of dollar-driven decision-making by healthcare business interests can be slowed and even reversed if we can reestablish that primacy of patient welfare-based decision-making. I'm fully convinced that it can be done, but I'm far less optimistic that we'll muster the effort societally to confront and alter where we're going right now. And so my ask is for people to, if they can find the time to read my book, that'd be grand. And if you have if as you're reading it, you're thinking BS, 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 Drew, you're missing the mark here, please let me know where you think I missed the mark, or if you've come across other studies that are in support, I would love to learn about those as well. And I'm willing to engage with anybody who finds that an important concept, the idea of preserving the patient-physician relationship. It's really the healthcare worker-patient relationship. It's not just limited to physicians, but the physicians are the primary actors.
Thank you, Drew. Thanks, Vicki and Drew. Really appreciate hearing about your work and that you were willing to be here today to share it with us. So now I welcome everyone to open your mic if you would like to ask more questions about anyone's work, express appreciation for their work, or ask what you need and offer what you can to spark some collaborations.
I'm still getting over all the amazing things we just heard from Drew. Just starting with all the top thing right now is the pain score, and they just want to sedate all the patients so they don't feel pain. Sedate's probably not the right word there, but I just can't get over that. That I'd never heard that before, as well as a lot of the other things he mentioned. Really amazing.
Indeed.
Yeah, we were sold a bill of goods by Purdue Pharma, but the idea there was a very rare chance of getting people addicted to OxyContin. But I was out of the ED for those 5 years. I came back and said, what is this all of a sudden? Where's everybody's common sense gone? The idea that narcotics are going to be all of a sudden non-addictive. That just, but I left out this quote that I wanted to include. There's a great article I came across in which the woman who's the CEO of a several billion-dollar healthcare hospital conglomeration was asked, what's one conviction in healthcare that needs to be questioned? And I assume with a straight face, because they printed it without reservations, he said, we need to question the idea that patients need to have a physician relationship. Patients need primary care, but not necessarily a physician relationship. I said, well, thank God she said the quiet part out loud. I don't have to feel like I'm a paranoid, that they're out to get us. Well, they're not out to get us, they're out to get our money. And of course, if you take the physician out of the interaction between the patient and the healthcare facility, well, you can sell them any bill of goods you can talk them into.
Thank you for that, Drew. Vicki, I'm curious. What is your story in regards to how you got to what you're doing now? Were you one of those leaders who wished you'd had?
Yes. Well, we're going to start with when I got my original supervisor role, I got nothing.
Mm,
They're like, yeah, you're a great clinician. Patients love you. You're doing a great job. You've got great outcomes. I applied for the position and they're like, yes, here you go. I didn't have a mentor. I didn't have a great example of a leader. I was figuring this out entirely on my own, made lots of mistakes, and and continued to make mistakes. And then periodically I would get like this little leadership training, or you'd get a disc assessment done. And it was just, and I watched our department director decide that she needed to do something for us. And she made some efforts, but she also wasn't necessarily skilled at teaching people how to be leaders, because she wasn't really skilled in her, as skilled as she could be. So yeah, this is about like helping the people who are doing the things and floundering the way that I did back when I got moved into those kinds of positions.
mm. My
It's
PhD.
just, I see it happen over and over and over again. And then they end up in that position for like 2 years and they're like, I'm done. And they don't necessarily see it from a space of, I don't know how to be a leader. They're like, they blame the staff. Like the staff is horrible. My staff is awful. And they blame the system or the staff. And I'm like, there are ways you could approach this that would make things different. And if you understood a little bit more about how you're showing up and your behaviors and how you have such an influence on people. And so, yeah, this comes from something that I didn't get when I was in those positions.
Vicki, I'm curious, since you train managers, there's something that I've noticed a lot. I think probably everybody's noticed it. You often get at companies, a team member who's very good at their job, but they're also very good at getting other team members fired. And I think that's called a toxic team member. And what do you do about that if you're a manager? How do you reduce that? First of all, is my premise correct in your experience that this thing happens?
What I see from toxic team members is that they just stir things up. They're triangulators. They hide. They're not. They don't approach things from a curiosity lens. They approach things from a right or wrong. And what they're going to say is you're wrong and I'm right, or the system is the problem. And so they encourage everybody to focus on who is to blame. And when you focus on who is to blame, then you're not actually solving any of the problems. So it's up to the leader to identify the people who come with that mindset and to actually do the work to either support them to understand how their behaviors are creating the toxic environment, or to help them, or to help the organization move them out, because a toxic employee is more damaging to any organization. So not doing something about a toxic employee is more damaging than getting rid of a toxic employee, regardless of their high performing behaviors in a clinical setting.
So true. And the longer you let them stay there, or the longer they've been there between different managers who's turned over, the more difficult it is to do what needs to be done.
I have a very specific example of someone who was in an organization 25 years, and with every manager who came on, they would be like, oh, she's a problem. And then they would try to work on it, and then they would give up because of their own ineffective leadership. Actually, I have examples of people who still work in the organization that I was at most recent that I'm like, you can see how it taints everybody else. They become jaded, they become disengaged. It doesn't matter what I do because they're doing. And so this behavior influences everybody around them. So as a leader, you have to deal with it. And it's the toxic person you have to deal with.
Yeah.
And that can be challenging.
Right.
I was brought into an organization, it was a rural hospital, and they were very dependent on a general surgeon who was bringing in a lot of revenue for this tiny little hospital. And this general surgeon was shunning people, literally shunning them. She'd need to schedule something for the OR, and so she'd ask a nurse to come over to the scheduler's desk and tell the scheduler what she needed because she wasn't speaking with the scheduler.
Oh, my.
That was a challenging one.
Mm.
I'm curious if anybody knows any healthcare organizations that are interested in setting up or using a coaching facility. I had two ideas I threw in the chat, but I wonder if anybody actually knows anyone who's doing it.
What do you mean a coaching facility?
For example, Stratum Med in the Midwest has multiple different ways of helping out the groups that are members. And one of them could be to have a bevy of coaches for people who have elevated a doctor to their level of incompetence and need to learn new skills. And that's
So
the Peter principle. I put that in the chat too. You know,
I
1960
saw the Peter principle.
Peter wrote the
Familiar with
Peter
that one.
principle, and in healthcare, nobody seems to pay attention to this. They
Yeah.
elevate people and then leave them to flounder.
Yeah.
Um,
So Vital Work Life is an EAP that developed a physician services specific, what did they call it? Physician services portion of their EAP. And they go around and get contracts with organizations and then provide not only coaching but counseling and other services, specifically for physicians, leaders in healthcare, APPs, PTs, PAs. So there are organizations like that out there.
I actually I'm a contract coach for a company called MenThrive. Actually, it's healthcare leadership coaching, and it's called MenThrive. It's a very small company at this moment. It's based in it's either Baltimore or Philadelphia. This is what happens when you don't meet people in person. You don't know where they live. And they're small, but it's the woman who started it is a adult critical care academic physician, and she's working with PAs, NPs, and physicians, and creating a community of and the 5 people who work at this company were all coaches who were trained by the same organization. And there's a MD, a DO, a PA, an OT, and a PT. And so we are the coaches who coach for this company. And it's small, but Lily is so engaged that I think it has the opportunity to really grow.
Mm.
And actually, some states are offering coaching and counseling and so forth to any physicians, PAs, NPs in the state. Virginia does that for one. Minnesota was doing it for a while, but they didn't have enough people take them up on it. So,
You know, this immediately reminds me of Happy the Movement, the company that flips the EAP model upside down and contacts everyone instead of waiting for people to scream in distress that they're drowning. And in medical care among physicians, it seems like we offer facilities to people who are becoming addicted or completely dysfunctional, and take the sickest of the lot and offer them some services. Whereas what we probably should be doing is to recognize that everybody who has moved up from their core skill set to management needs help. Everybody.
yep.
So that's why I was thinking in terms of a facility. And in my experience, such as it is, and it's almost all old, is that they want to train people in an academic model to become a physician executive. So there was the American College of Physician Executives. It's defunct. There's the Masters in Medical Administration.
It changed its name, Paul. It's still around. It's AAPL now.
Okay, then. Well, when Reynolds Tobacco changed its name to Altria, I also got lost.
It's gotten better though. When I first started coaching back in 2008, it was the disruptive physicians that were becoming my clients, and now it's much more people being proactive. I'm thinking about transitioning out of medicine. Help me with that transition. I've just taken on a leadership position. Help me with that. So it's fortunately, and I started talking about that way back in 2008. I don't want the ones that you're kicking out next week. That's not who I want to coach. You
Right.
know, I don't want to be known as, if you get lined up with Dr. Ellison, you're
You're on your way
you're
out.
on your way out the door, right? It's gotten a lot better.
I had a conversation this last weekend about change management with a guy who's trying to change churches, and he had never heard of the science of change management or read any of the literature on it. So he was pretty surprised that there is such a thing. But working with the back end, the dysfunctional people is remedial work. Working on the front end with the innovators is not remedial in the least. It's charging forward.
Yeah. Very different.
Very different.
So I'm hearing what you're saying is that every time somebody gets moved into a different position or leadership position, that if we could make organizations just say, as part of your your
Mhm.
promotion, this comes with it. And you can say no, but this comes with it. Actually, we shouldn't even allow them to say no. Just this comes with it.
Yeah, it could be
Part of the package of this
part
of the
part
raise.
of the orientation. Probably mostly I wish I had it. I had to find it on my own.
I wonder how many people would go through that and then decide against the leadership position. You know,
That's
if you
fascinating
know,
question.
Be
if you
careful what
know
you
all of
do.
what leadership involves, would you really choose it? You know, because it's very different than like it's a different skill set than the job.
Right.
It's
Yeah, one of the first things I do is a values clarification. And if their values were not in alignment with what they anticipated this leadership position to be, they might decide to go elsewhere.
Yeah, I like to spend a lot of time with the why. Why did you take this position and really getting into people's reasons? Because so much of the time they haven't even looked at it. They're like, well, it was the next step. It's what I was supposed to do. And really getting into, did you do this because you want to contribute? Did you do this because you have concerns? Did you do it because you want to make change? What's the real underlying reason? Because when they can tap into that, they can do such a better job. And they have a much better understanding of why they're there. And then they can communicate so much better.
Mm.
I'm all about the why.
And the agency.
Okay, this is personal. I ran for chief of staff at my hospital one year, and another doc was running against me. We were both family practitioners, and I thought we were sort of equals. And during the campaign, I actually realized that he really wanted to be the chief of staff, and I really wanted to be a change agent, and they're not the same thing.
Different job description.
Yeah, so I basically stopped campaigning and hoped that he would win, which he did, because I realized that is just not what I wanted to do and wanted to be. Um, I guess again, I sort of wish somebody would have coached me along the way, but I didn't get a career coach for a first hour until I was about 50.
And I think that gives each of us such opportunity to say, what would I have wished I had? And how might I gift that back?
And now we know from Drew that if you gift that back, you'll probably live longer.
There you go.
Yep. But people still try to put you down.
I know. People will people.
You're old.
Yeah.
The fight song for the football team at my college was illegitimately non carborundum, which is fractured Latin, translates into "Don't let the bastards grind you down."
Mhm. I remember
love
that.
it. I
That was the
love it.
70s, wasn't it, Paul?
It's still there.
Drew, I'm curious because you're fighting through a lot. Your body is fighting against you, and yet you keep going. What words of wisdom would you give to those who may lose their momentum and passion as they work in this difficult work of healthcare change? What would you want to say to them, and what do you wish your legacy would be?
Tough question, because I'm not sure how much credit I can take for being a stubborn son of a gun. So it's in my nature from the get-go.
I understand it, Drew.
You could put a gloss on it and say it's resilience and it's flexibility. I'm just basically a stubborn bastard, frankly. So I don't know if that's a attitude you can adopt or whether but I I'm alarmed at where we're going in healthcare, but I'm also angry about it. I'm angry as a physician. I'm angry as a patient, and I had some experiences early in life, athletic experiences, finding that if I persisted, I could succeed. So I learned persistence at an early age, and then got sick at age 19 with inflammatory bowel disease, which is an awful thing to have. But I decided I was going to not let it rule my life. And people have always asked me, gee, since I was only 19 when I got sick, did you become a doctor because of your chronic illness? And I'd like to say I became a doctor in spite of it, not because of it.
Mm.
So I had the idea to go to medical school, and then I got sick, and then a sensible person probably would have said, hey, that's probably too much to try to balance at the same time. But so
Mm.
I think, like a lot of things in life, you can only achieve what you ask yourself to shoot for.
So, Drew, you've been battling this for a long time.
And basically my whole life, I've had this chronic autoimmune disease, and maybe it's, and I have at times wondered, maybe because I'm such a stubborn son of a gun, that's my immune system is of a similar character. And how much I'm bringing on myself by being stubborn.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. So, Dawn, I see that you shared one of your talks is cracking the armor that prevents us from healing.
Yeah, I was, Chris and I were texting or messaging back and forth and talking about how the pandemic really kind of opened up the coaching field somewhat. People, I think, finally realized that they might benefit from some help, and it was okay to ask for help. And so, yeah, one of the talks that I was giving, I'm giving it in November again too, but several times during the pandemic, was called Cracking the Armor That Prevents Us from Healing, which is that, stigma that says, I'm a physician, I don't need help, right? And yeah, so, and it's about relationships, and it's about connection, and it's about, getting to know the people that you work with, and expressing, letting them know you know them, and also letting them know you care about them. So it's a fun one. I like giving it.
So, Chris, if I may, can you tell us a little bit about yourself since Dawn was exchanging messages with you? I assume the two of you know each other and you probably have a fabulous background. No? Okay,
No.
but you probably have a fabulous background that drew you here today.
Sure. Hi, everybody. So I have been a designer and a design strategist, a consultant for 30 years. So most of that in healthcare. I started working, doing work in the device diagnostic industries, pharma a little bit, and then about 15 years into my career, started to want to apply the lessons learned to care environments. So I had the opportunity to build a relationship with the Harvard School of Public Health and work on things with the World Health Organization, CDC, mostly around communication tools for improving practice. So often that might be like safe surgery checklist, end of life conversation guides, that sort of thing. So most recently, I just yesterday wrapped up a role at a global consultancy as sort of their leading for their healthcare projects, which they weren't bringing in. So that's one reason I left. So working on the strategy side of experience transformation. So often in digital tools, either for facing clinicians or facing administrators, other folks sort of behind the scenes, but also patient facing and practitioner clinician facing, not just physicians, but all kinds of care providers. So broad-ranging career in design, but my keen interest is on improving healthcare. It makes me sad and angry and engaged and inspired in different proportions on different days. But I've been, contributing a little bit to, and very interested in following the patient revolution. And I co-organized Design for Healthcare in Seattle for about 6 or 7 years. So trying to build community like this one of people who are interested in improving care and really changing how we think about what our options are and what's required to deliver care in the U.S.
Wow, Chris, I'm so glad you're here.
Yeah, me too. It's really fascinating to hear, the different work people are doing and the questions they have and connections they're trying to make.
Yeah, yeah.
We have a few other people in that space, Chris, of design and graphics and communications. And so I think you'll enjoy meeting some of the other folks in this community as well.
Great.
Indeed.
Scusi, but Chris, are you really in Olympia?
I really am in Olympia.
He's in our
I just found you on LinkedIn, and I'm in Anacortes.
Yeah.
Oh,
We have mutual friends.
Well, it feels like we're kind of winding down this portion. What do you think? Should we jump in a little early into our network conversations?
I think so.